I refused to be a living donor for my estranged father. My siblings called me Heartless, but they didn't know the whole story. I never thought I'd be writing this, but here I am, pouring my heart out to strangers on the internet. I guess I just need to get this off my chest and maybe find some validation that I'm not the monster my family is making me out to be. For context, I'm a 32-year-old woman. I have two younger siblings, Sarah, 29, and Mike, 27. Our father, let's call him Frank, left when I was 15, Sarah was 12, and Mike was 10. He just disappeared one day. No note, no explanation, nothing. It devastated us all, but especially our mom. She was left to raise 3 kids on her own, working multiple jobs just to keep food on the table and a roof over our heads. Growing up after that was tough. We all dealt with it differently. I became fiercely independent and protective of my mom and siblings. Sarah threw herself into her studies, probably as a coping mechanism. Mike had a harder time. He acted out, got into trouble at school, and started hanging out with the wrong crowd. Despite everything, we managed to stick together as a family. Mom was our rock, and we supported each other as best we could. I put myself through college working part-time jobs, Sarah got a scholarship, and even Mike eventually straightened out and found his path. Fast forward to about a month ago. Out of the blue, Sarah called me. Her voice was shaky, and I could tell something was wrong. Sis, I don't know how to tell you this, but Dad's back. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. 17 years of anger, hurt, and abandonment issues came rushing back in an instant. What do you mean back? I managed to choke out. Sarah explained that Frank had reached out to her through social media. He was living in a city about 3 hours away and wanted to reconnect with his children. Apparently, he'd been following our lives from afar all these years, too much of a coward to reach out until now. I was furious. How dare he think he could just waltz back into our lives after all this time? But Sarah and Mike, they were curious. They wanted to meet him, to understand why he left, to see if there was any chance of rebuilding a relationship. I told them they were crazy, that he didn't deserve a second chance. But they went ahead and arranged a meeting anyway. They asked me to come, but I refused. I couldn't bear the thought of seeing his face again. A week later, Sarah called me again. This time, she was in tears. "It's Dad," she sobbed. "He's sick. Really sick. He needs a liver transplant, and he's asking if we'd be willing to get tested as potential donors." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The audacity of this man to abandon us for nearly 2 decades and then come crawling back asking for a piece of our bodies? It was too much. But Sarah and Mike, they were considering it. They said it was the right thing to do, that despite everything, he was still our father. They got tested, but neither of them was a match. That's when the pressure started mounting on me. My siblings begged me to get tested, saying I was his last hope. Frank apparently didn't have much time left, and his blood type matched mine. I stood my ground. I told them I wouldn't do it, that Frank had made his choice years ago when he walked out on us. He wasn't my father anymore, he was just a stranger who shared some DNA with me. Sarah and Mike couldn't understand. They called me selfish, heartless, cruel. They said I was essentially killing our father by refusing to help. The guilt tripping was relentless. But here's the thing, there's more to the story. Something I've never told anyone, not even my siblings or my mom. Something that happened just before Frank left us. I was 15, awkward and insecure like most teenagers. I had started to notice changes in my body and was struggling to come to terms with them. One night, I overheard Frank on the phone, talking to someone in a way that made my skin crawl. He was describing me, my developing body, in graphic, disgusting detail. I was frozen with shock and fear. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. When he finally hung up, I confronted him. I demanded to know who he was talking to and why he would say such horrible things about his own daughter. Frank's face went pale. He tried to deny it at first, then tried to convince me I had misunderstood. But I knew what I had heard. I threatened to tell Mom, to call the police. That's when he changed tactics. He grabbed my arm, squeezing so hard it left bruises. He told me that if I ever breathed a word of this to anyone, he would hurt Mom and my siblings. He said no one would believe me anyway, that I'd just tear the family apart. I was terrified. I didn't know what to do. For the next few days, I avoided Frank as much as possible, jumping at every sound, flinching whenever he came near me. And then, he was gone. Just like that. Part of me was relieved. The threat was gone. But another part of me felt guilty, wondering if I had somehow caused this, if I had driven him away and destroyed our family. So I buried it deep inside, never telling anyone what had really happened. For years, I've carried this secret, this burden. It's affected every relationship I've ever had, made it hard for me to trust anyone. And now, here was Frank, asking me to literally give a piece of myself to save him. I couldn't do it. I wouldn't do it. The very thought of my body being cut open, of a part of me being put inside him. It made me physically ill. But how could I explain this to my siblings without revealing the ugly truth? How could I make them understand the depth of my refusal without dredging up a past that I've worked so hard to overcome? So I've stayed silent, enduring their anger and disappointment. They think I'm being cruel, but they don't know the cruelty I've already endured at Frank's hands. I don't know what to do. Part of me wants to tell them everything, to make them understand. But another part of me is still that scared 15-year-old girl, afraid of tearing the family apart, afraid of not being believed. Am I wrong for refusing? Am I a monster for letting a man die when I could potentially save him? Or am I justified in protecting myself from someone who betrayed me in the worst possible way? I feel lost, confused, and so alone. My siblings barely speak to me now. My mom, bless her heart, is trying to stay neutral, but I can see the pain and confusion in her eyes. She doesn't understand why I'm being so stubborn, as she puts it. I've thought about telling her the truth, but I'm afraid it would destroy her. She's finally in a good place after years of struggling as a single mom. How can I burden her with this knowledge now? I've considered going to therapy to work through all of this, but I'm terrified of opening up that Pandora's box of memories and emotions. What if I fall apart completely? What if I can't put myself back together? There are moments when I second-guess my decision. When the guilt becomes overwhelming, and I think maybe I should just do it, just to make peace with my family. But then I remember that night, remember the fear and disgust I felt, and I know I can't go through with it. I've tried to rationalize it to myself. Even if I did agree to be tested, there's no guarantee I'd be a match. And even if I were a match, liver donation is a major surgery with its own risks and a long recovery time. I have a life, a career, responsibilities. Can I really be expected to put all of that on hold for someone who abandoned us? But then the doubts creep in again. What if he's truly changed? What if he's genuinely remorseful for leaving us? Don't people deserve second chances? But then again, does that apply to someone who sexualized their own child? I've gone round and round in circles, arguing with myself, losing sleep, barely eating. This situation has consumed my life for the past month, and I don't know how to move forward. I've thought about reaching out to Frank directly, confronting him about what happened all those years ago. But the thought of hearing his voice, of potentially being in the same room as him, makes me break out in a cold sweat. My siblings keep sending me updates about his condition. They tell me how he asks about me, how he wants to apologize for leaving, how he understands if I can't forgive him but hopes I'll at least consider helping him live. Each message feels like a knife twisting in my gut. I know they're trying to appeal to my compassion, to any lingering familial feelings I might have. But all it does is remind me of the betrayal, of the years of abandonment, of the secret I've carried for so long. I've tried to explain to them that it's not just about him leaving. I've told them there are things they don't know, things I can't talk about. But they dismiss it, saying whatever happened in the past can't be so bad that it's worth letting someone die over. If only they knew. If only I could make them understand without having to relive that nightmare. I've started having panic attacks. The stress of the situation, the constant pressure from my siblings, the weight of my secret, it's all becoming too much. I find myself gasping for air at random moments, my heart racing, feeling like the walls are closing in on me. I've taken to going on long walks late at night, just to escape the suffocating atmosphere of my apartment. The cool night air helps clear my head, if only temporarily. But even then, I can't escape my thoughts, the endless loop of memories and guilt and anger. I've considered just disappearing myself. packing a bag and leaving everything behind, starting fresh somewhere new where no one knows me or my history. But I know that's not the answer. I can't abandon my mom and siblings the way Frank did, even if they're angry with me right now. So here I am, pouring my heart out to strangers on the internet, hoping for what? Understanding? Advice? Absolution? I don't even know anymore. I just know that I'm tired. Tired of carrying this secret, tired of feeling guilty for protecting myself, tired of being torn between self-preservation and family obligation. Am I wrong for refusing to be a donor? Am I justified in my decision? How do I move forward from here? How do I maintain my relationships with my siblings without compromising my own mental health and well-being? I feel like I'm drowning, and I don't know how to save myself without hurting everyone around me. Any advice, any words of wisdom, anything at all would be appreciated. I just need to know I'm not alone in this impossible situation. Thank you for reading this far, if you have. Just writing it all out has been cathartic in a way. Maybe this is the first step towards healing, towards finding a way through this mess. I hope so, because right now, I feel more lost than ever. Edit. Wow, I never expected this post to blow up like it has. Thank you all for your kind words, support, and advice. I've been reading through all the comments, and I'm overwhelmed by the outpouring of empathy and understanding. To address some common questions and provide an update. 1. Yes, I've decided to seek therapy. Many of you suggested this, and you're right, I need professional help to work through this trauma. I've made an appointment with a therapist who specializes in childhood trauma and family issues. 2. No, I haven't told my siblings or mom the full truth yet. I'm working up the courage to do so, possibly with the help of my therapist. I know many of you think I should tell them immediately, but I need to be in a better mental state before I can handle that conversation. 3. To those asking about legal action against Frank, I've considered it, but given the time that's passed and the lack of evidence, I'm not sure it would go anywhere. Plus, I'm not sure I have the strength to go through a legal battle right now. It's something I'll discuss with my therapist. 4. I've decided to stand firm in my decision not to be a donor. Reading your comments has helped reinforce that I'm not being selfish or cruel, I'm protecting myself, and that's okay. 5. To those sharing similar stories, thank you. Knowing I'm not alone in this kind of situation is incredibly comforting. I'm sorry for what you've been through, and I hope you found healing. 6. For those offering resources for abuse survivors, thank you. I've bookmarked several and will be looking into them. I'll try to update again once I've had a chance to process everything and perhaps after I've had a few therapy sessions. Thank you all again for your support. For the first time in a long while, I feel like maybe, just maybe, everything will be okay. Final update. It's been 6 months since my last post, and so much has happened that I hardly know where to begin. I want to thank everyone who offered support, advice, and shared their own stories. Your words gave me the strength to face what came next, and I'm grateful beyond measure. First, the news that's probably on everyone's mind: Frank passed away 2 months ago. He never got the transplant he needed. I'd be lying if I said I didn't feel a twinge of guilt when I heard the news, but I stand by my decision. My therapist has been helping me work through these complex emotions, reminding me that it's okay to feel conflicted and that Frank's choices led to this outcome, not mine. Now, let me back up and walk you through what's happened since my last update. Therapy has been intense. I found an amazing therapist who specializes in childhood trauma and family dynamics. It hasn't been easy. There have been sessions where I've cried so hard I could barely breathe, days where I felt like I was reliving every painful moment of my past. But it's helping. Slowly but surely, I'm starting to unpack years of buried trauma and learn healthier coping mechanisms. One of the hardest parts of therapy was finally confronting the full extent of what Frank's actions did to me. I had spent so long minimizing it, telling myself it wasn't that bad because he never actually touched me. My therapist helped me understand that what he did was still abuse, still a profound betrayal of trust that had shaped so much of my life without me even realizing it. About a month into therapy, I finally found the courage to tell my mom and siblings the truth. It was the hardest conversation I've ever had. We met at my mom's house, neutral territory. I had my therapist on standby, ready to do an emergency video session if needed. I'll never forget the looks on their faces as I told them everything: the phone call I overheard, Frank's threats, the real reason he left. Mom broke down crying. Mike punched a wall and had to leave the room. Sarah just sat there in stunned silence, shaking her head in disbelief. For a moment, I was that scared 15-year-old girl again, terrified that they wouldn't believe me, that I had just destroyed what was left of our family. But then Mom pulled me into her arms, holding me tighter than she ever had before, whispering, "I'm so sorry, baby. I'm so sorry I didn't protect you." The aftermath of that revelation was messy. Mom fell into a deep depression, blaming herself for not seeing the signs. Mike's anger issues flared up. He wanted to track Frank down and make him pay for what he'd done to our family. Sarah withdrew into herself, struggling to reconcile the father she thought she knew with the monster I'd revealed him to be. We all started family therapy, trying to rebuild our relationships and work through years of misunderstandings and unspoken pain. It's been challenging, but we're slowly finding our way back to each other. There have been heated arguments, tearful reconciliations, and moments of unexpected laughter as we navigate this new reality together. One of the most surprising outcomes was my relationship with Mike. He's become my fiercest protector and supporter. He apologized profusely for pressuring me about the transplant, saying he felt sick knowing he had caused me more pain. We've grown closer than ever, often staying up late into the night talking, making up for all the years we spent distant from each other. Sarah had a harder time. She had been the closest to Frank since he came back into our lives, and she struggled with feeling betrayed and foolish for believing in him. She went through a period where she barely spoke to any of us, lost in her own grief and confusion. But slowly, she's starting to come around. Last week, she asked if she could join me for one of my therapy sessions, wanting to understand more about what I've been going through. Mom's journey has been the hardest to watch. She's carrying so much guilt, convinced that she failed as a mother by not protecting me. She's in therapy too now, working through her own trauma of being abandoned and then learning this horrible truth. There are days when I have to remind her that she was a victim too, that she did the best she could with what she knew at the time. As for Frank's passing, it brought up a whirlwind of emotions for all of us. Mike and Sarah had been in contact with him near the end, and they were hit hard by his death despite everything they now knew. I felt numb, mostly. A chapter of my life had closed, but I didn't feel the relief or closure I thought I might. We didn't attend the funeral. Instead, we held our own small ceremony in our backyard, not to mourn Frank, but to mourn the family we could have been, the childhood we should have had. We each wrote letters, not to Frank, but to our past selves, acknowledging our pain and promising to heal. We burned the letters and planted a tree in their place. Mom said it was a symbol of our family's resilience, that from the ashes of our past, something new and strong could grow. In terms of my personal life, things are starting to look up. I've taken a leave of absence from work to focus on my mental health, and my boss has been surprisingly understanding. I've started volunteering at a local crisis center for abuse survivors, hoping to help others who might be going through similar situations. It's been incredibly rewarding and has helped me feel less alone in my experiences. I've also started dating again, slowly and cautiously. I met a wonderful man through a support group for adult children of absentee parents. He's kind, patient, and understanding of my need to take things slow. For the first time in my life, I feel like I might be capable of a healthy, trusting relationship. There have been setbacks, of course. I still have nightmares sometimes. There are days when the guilt over Frank's death weighs heavily on me, despite knowing I made the right choice for myself. I've had to distance myself from some friends who couldn't understand my decision and continue to judge me for it. But overall, I'm hopeful. For the first time in years, I feel like I'm standing on solid ground. I'm learning to set boundaries, to prioritize my own well-being without feeling selfish. I'm rediscovering parts of myself that I thought were lost forever. To those who are going through similar situations, whether it's dealing with family pressure, childhood trauma, or impossible decisions, please know that you're not alone. Healing is possible. It's not easy, and it's not linear, but it is possible. Surround yourself with support, seek professional help if you can, and remember that you have the right to protect yourself. Thank you all again for your support throughout this journey. Your kindness and understanding have been a lifeline during the darkest moments. I may not post again for a while as I continue to focus on healing and rebuilding my life, but please know that your words have made a real, tangible difference in my life. For those in similar situations, remember, your body is your own. Your life is your own. You have the right to say no, even to family, even when it's hard. Healing is a journey, and it's okay to take it one step at a time. Take care of yourselves, and thank you for being part of my journey towards healing.